Hello everyone. Today the church celebrates the great feast of Peter and Paul, the solemnity of these two great apostles, some of the first evangelizers in the church. And it's always made me wonder why we bring those two together in one day and celebrate their feast on one day. Because there's so much to say about Peter and there could be so much to say about Paul. Our New Testament would be very incomplete without the letters of Paul, all of his epistles, and also the two epistles of St. Peter. And we also recognize Peter as the first among the leaders of the apostles, really the first of our popes that we confess to kind of be the beginning of the papacy with Peter as well. So there's a lot we can say about both of these. So I always wondered, why do we put them together in one day? And it makes it a hard thing to preach and to preach a short homily on this day. But I think there are some really great reasons to bring these two together because they form the pillars and the foundation of our faith from the beginning. Peter, known as the apostle to the Jewish people, being a good evangelizer there, and Paul, the apostle to the Gentiles. So these two form the foundation of evangelization in the church. Without their preaching, the church would have not been as successful as it was in those first 100 years or so since Jesus died. So we put them together in one day, but there's other things that really bring them together as well. Both of these men, both of these apostles, underwent great transformations that made them more humble. Their encounter with Jesus Christ was foundational to the way that they ministered in their preaching. Peter was continually taught by the Lord throughout the Gospels. We can hear that and we can see it, how Peter kind of turns from this really rambunctious type of a character to really becoming more humble and obedient to the way that God is leading him. So Peter, who would rebuke the Lord and get rebuked right back, or Peter who would deny the Lord, but then makes that triple confession of faith, saying, "Yes, Lord, you know I love you," and Jesus telling him to feed his sheep. And Paul, we know, underwent a great transformation because he was one who persecuted the early Christians. He brought them in chains to Jerusalem. But then he had that profound encounter with Jesus on the road to Damascus where Jesus said, he said, "Saul, why are you persecuting me?" And then Saul undergoes this transformation so profound that he changes his name to Paul. And he becomes the great evangelizer, apostle to the nations, to the Gentile people. Both of these men also made great confessions of faith. In today's gospel, we see with St. Peter that this is the great confession of faith where Jesus builds the church upon the rock of St. Peter. When Jesus asks, "Who do people say that I am? Who do you say that I am?" Peter says, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." So not only is he saying that Jesus is, yes, the Messiah whom the Jewish people have been waiting for, but also that Jesus is God, that he is divine. And that kind of confession of faith could not come from Peter's own self, but it was a gift of the Spirit. That knowledge came from the Spirit. And Jesus, recognizing that, then makes Peter the foundation of the church. He says that on this rock, Peter, I will build my church. And that's where Peter receives his name change. And then, of course, for St. Paul, he confessed the faith with everything that he did when he started his ministry. He was able to preach to so many different kinds of people. He said in one of his letters, "I've become all things to all people." Not that he was a kind of a two-faced type of a guy, but he understood how evangelization worked, how to speak to some people, how to use good metaphors for these kind of people or for these kind of people. And with that, he confessed the living faith that Jesus is God with all that he did. And then finally, both of these men gave great witnesses to the faith in their martyrdom. They were witnesses to the faith, and they were both martyred in the city of Rome, right around the same time, about 65 AD. And their paths converged there, and because of that, then they are also brought together in the church. Being the two great pillars of faith, their martyrdom shows us that they were willing to confess Jesus even to the point of death to themselves and death to the world in general. So today we thank the Lord for these two great witnesses to our faith, these two great pillars of faith that really spread the faith far and wide in its just very infant years. And we ask the Lord to bring about greater transformation in our lives. Help us to confess the true and living faith and be witnesses to that faith, even when it means death to self and death to the world. God bless you, my friends.